Good day to everyone. Thank you for joining our final series of educational webinars for 2019. Today's topic is maintain effective GRC control as you upgrade to SAP S4 HANA. I'm joined by our marketing manager, Emma, and she'll be taking your questions at the end of the session today. My name is Adil Khan. I'm the CEO here at SafePaaS, and we're excited to welcome our SAP customers and partners to this webinar. We'll jump right in. So after a quick introduction of SafePaaS, for those of you that are new to this educational webinar series, we'll make a brief introduction, and then we'll jump into why SAP customers are moving to HANA, provide a quick overview, some of the benefits of moving to HANA, and why we see a big trend. We'll talk a little bit about GRC controls for SAP. Specifically, our scope is today limited to access controls, although we work with process controls and other areas as well, which we'll basically touch on and give you some quick checklist of things to consider when planning your upgrade for GRC along with your HANA. And then give you some options on how SafePaaS can help you move to the S4 platform if you are planning to do that in the coming year or years, and share some new ways of looking at the same information, or better ways of looking at the same information. Just a bit of background on SafePaaS. So we specialize in access controls. That's one of our key areas. And Gartner has recognized as the most complete platform. And what that means is we have multi-platform policy management capabilities. So if you're running SAP as your main platform, but you have JD Edwards for your manufacturing plants and PeopleSoft for your HR, we're the company to call, because we can help you put all those policies across any data source together. We have been working with SAP customers for the past 10 years, and we also work with all the major audit firms as well as professional organizations to help our customers get the most out of their SAP systems in terms of risk management. A few of our customers, so about 200, 250 customers worldwide, in Europe, US, Americas in general, and Middle East, Africa, and Asia as well. So let's take a look at our platform briefly, and I'll conclude the introductions with that. So our platform basically helps you control information risks. Now, the risks typically start by identifying a risk library. For most customers, that's called risk control matrix. And then assessing that risk, and then, of course, controlling that risk. So we offer a number of solutions. You can see at ARC-PAS, which stands for Audit Risk and Compliance Management. So you have a risk library and a rules repository. Our rules repository has hundreds of controls specifically built for ERP systems. So, for example, segregation of duty controls for SAP, HANA 4, S4, etc. We also have risk and control matrices for business controls. And then we have tools like Audit Manager, Risk Manager, and Compliance Manager. These applications enable you to assess risk, comply with your controls that you are required through regulatory frameworks, and then auditing those controls to mitigate risk and comply with your business. So that's what Audit Manager does. On top of that, you can see there's two IT governance suites. So on the left, you'll see access controls management. And that's where, if you're looking for an alternative to the inherent AACG, the application controls tool within SAP. And then on the right, you'll see continuous controls monitoring. So that's more process controls and the framework to be able to monitor your controls in your transactions, configuration, and so forth. And then on top, you'll see ProcessPaaS, which is our process controls, for example, financial close and so forth. So like I said, today we'll focus on access management, and then in the future we'll certainly want to get more education out there about process controls, which are a fascinating way of improving business. There's a lot of new innovation happening here as we look at 2020 and forward. For example, RPA enabled processes that we're looking at, and then insight, predictive analytics, and so forth. So all of these areas are interesting to our customers, and we'd love to hear more from you on what you need, and reach out to us. But this is basically a very brief overview of our platform. So let's now take a look at the HANA platform itself and what are some of the technology and business benefits you can achieve from it. So HANA has been around, in fact, for a long time. It's as you can see from this chart, that it was in-memory database started back in 2006. So we're a long ways in this journey. Now in 2019. Customers have found this to be real beneficial solution for them in terms of adopting the newer modern ways of conducting business as they go to what's called a digital platform. I know it's a sort of an overused term these days, but that's where a number of initiatives are being budgeted and funded among our customers and market in general. So there are quite a few benefits of customers that want to take advantage of big data, better reporting, better BI, faster response time, ultimately better service to customers, and better management and productivity of the employee teams across the globe, as well as managing your resources, which is the heart of the SAP success stories around resource management, enterprise resource management. So we'll touch briefly on that. Again, this is not an SAP specific introduction. We're focusing more on the controls, but I did want to talk a little bit about what are some of the benefits of why customers are doing that. So the source for these slides is SAP. So as one of the partnership benefits, you get educational information like this. And so if you look at the platform, it's basically 4 major categories of the platform to build and maintain your enterprise systems, right? So application services, application lifecycle management, we'll talk a little bit about that. Processing capabilities are advanced. You can see some of the latest technologies like streaming analytics, JSON, and so forth, text analytics. These are some of the emerging areas where customers are looking to take advantage of digitizing their businesses and getting better responsive to the marketplace. Integration and quality services. So integration is where SAP opens up to, for example, folks like us, like SafePaaS, where we can leverage our data probe tools to run the ETL, extract data, and make it more enriched for you to analyze information from a risk perspective. At the bottom, you'll see that database services, and that makes it possible for you to have a multi-tenant system, for example, and you can have the scalability that you're looking for in your organization to get to have a single platform for OLTP, online transaction processing, as well as database analysis, data level analysis, which is growing significantly for our clients. And it has all the assurances around disaster recovery and so forth. So this is a vast amount of upgrades and benefits that are bundled into the HANA platform, and that's what's driving the market to upgrade primarily. But there's also the support question, right? There are some deadlines for customers that are running the older versions of SAP to get off those versions. So there's a significant upcoming change that we expect in the market as a result of these benefits introduced by SAP. So if you look at the application layer for a minute here, you'll see that SAP has adopted some of the most advanced user experiences where you can see the information on any device, which has been the mantra of the industry, to be able to get to your data on a mobile device, iPhone, etc., or on your traditional computer at the same time, be able to be productive wherever you are automatically, right? So that's the big benefit you'll see compared to the previous releases. And so what that means to you is your employee population is more productive, your partners are more informed, your management can make faster decisions. So all of those things lead to a better run enterprise. Support standards and languages, so you can see that SAP has grown into adopting many different standards. All the popular standards are now supported from the platform level, from the application services level. So partners like us can access the necessary information and analyze it and enrich your experience even further beyond what's available out of the box with SAP already. And I'll give you some examples of how we're doing that. And there's the built-in tools that help you manage the applications and so forth as well, which enable you to run your application lifecycle management better and ensure that you're at the right level of patching and so forth. I won't have much time to get into Fiori UX, which is the branding and the UI capabilities, but we'll certainly cover that at a future session. We're excited about it. I definitely wanted to cover that. Bring it up, I mean, on this session, because there's a whole area of controls from an access perspective that we will address with Fiori. Now let's take a look at the database layer, because that's an important layer, since most of the work that risk managers have to do and auditors have to do relates to data and data models. So you'll see that the data storage and administration of data and security, access to that data, all of that is now available through various database services. And that's what turns the data into what we call real-time information for better decision-making, right? So if you know that you're, let's say in a manufacturing environment where you're about to run out of a key component that is important to making the final product, you have complex supply chain. Let's say you're Airbus or someone really complex in terms of manufacturing process with a long supply chain that's global in nature. You can now apply that real-time information to predict when certain inventory is running low and replenish it more effectively. And this can extend to some of the more modern innovations that we're seeing among our leading customer base, like our RFID and so forth. For example, in oil and gas, SAP is very popular, and we're seeing customers adopt RFID technology for maintenance and doing preventive maintenance. So real-time data is gold for our customers, and this is a key benefit that you get at the data level. Second one is a cost saving. So the complaint any large system would have is the amount of effort required to maintain it, number of people, etc., hours, and people are overworked. So the database tuning means that we can do performance and run our ad hoc queries, which are so important to finding needle in the haystack, quote unquote, right? Because there's one set of reports, like your aging report and so forth, that tells you what's happening in behind, in the back rear view mirror, basically, right? What happened last 90 days. But what customers and managers are really curious about is what's going to happen in the future, and being able to understand and plan the future better. And so be able to do that without database tuning means you can get better information at lower cost. So your ROI goes up, return on investment goes up. So that's a huge benefit of moving to the HANA platform. And then as a result of moving to this platform, it enables you to run transactions and analytics together. And so you don't have stale information, right? We talked about real-time information, but also the information that you receive is as good as the last transaction. So someone enters a large journal entry to do an adjustment on a liability, your CFO would know it before the month-end close, right? So that's the level of benefits we're bringing to the table with HANA. It is cloud ready. So the database itself is cloud ready, which means you have the option to go with cloud, or like most customers, you may start with a hybrid approach or even on-premise. So that flexibility makes it possible for you to adopt the latest and greatest technology and then decide on the infrastructure that best suits your framework, your regulations, and so forth. And there is no limited size, so it's unlimited capability. So not only it's fast, but it doesn't have the limit, so it's very scalable. So next, let's take a look at integration services, which is really exciting, as I said before, for partners like SafePaaS, because we work closely with integration services to be able to enable our clients to not only just detect risks, but also prevent them using this exposed APIs that are available through integration services, etc. So we can obviously access information stored in various silos of your current environment. So as soon as you move to the new environment, many of our clients use ABAP right now to extract data and analyze it. You have more ways of doing that, more efficient, modern ways of modern IT ways of doing things through these integration layers, which enables you to be more responsive to market conditions. For example, one of the controls many of our clients have is supplier check, right? So before you create a supplier, you want to make sure they're not on a blacklist of some kind of a government list or other industry credit risk lists and so forth. So you might be using a service like Dun & Bradstreet, or there are many others like that. And so what happens is when you use this type of service, we can automatically go and check, you put a supplier in, we can go run a check against the supplier database, and then if there's a credit risk or other regulatory risk, we can prevent that supplier from getting exposed to your payable system and hold them at the procurement side. So that enables you to limit the risks, and if we can prevent the risks, that saves you a significant amount of detection and remediation effort, right? So that's possible because of these integration services. You can also replicate and move the data in real time from cloud to on-premise as needed. So for example, SafePaaS is in the cloud and your SAP is running on HANA on-premise, you can basically replicate certain data that's required for further analysis or process management to extend your capabilities to, let's say, your trading partners and employees, etc. Capture and analyze live data streams. So this is new and exciting, right? It's one thing to say that you can make decisions on static data, but if you can capture the data as it's streaming and make decisions faster, then you're ahead of the competition, right? You can understand the customers, you sense the customer needs better. It's in the retail industry. It's fully adopted. It's Christmas season, so those of you shopping online, you'll know that Amazon does this all the time. They stream the data, and based on where the data is, they can make suggestions on other products that might complete your shopping experience. So data streaming is being adopted by retailers as well as other industries where the customer, requires that level of guidance in order to make the purchase decision. There are many other applications, but that's one example of where integration services are helping our clients get more value out of their investment in HANA. And so, again, being able to move data around different needs as the needs apply, whether using tools like Ultralight or SQL Anywhere, you're able to get to the data at the source. And there's multiple access points from HANA to big data, which means that you can do more analysis using the industry standard big data solutions that are available and supported as market standards. So, Hive or Vorize, which is the SAP itself, and many others listed here. So these are integration services that you'll benefit from, and that'll make your organization more responsive to market conditions, customer needs, supply chain, your own employee productivity, right? Which is why customers are telling us they're adopting the newer, more flexible, agile digital platform from SAP. So let's take a look at what happens to your controls. So first, let's kind of back up a little bit and talk about what are the GRC controls that are available to you as you move to HANA 4. So I see basically customers in two categories that we talk to. So there are customers that are already on a GRC platform from SAP, and they have to possibly upgrade that platform to get to, let's say, GRC 12.0 or beyond. So that's one category. Others that are, as part of this upgrade, are considering GRC, right? So they haven't had it in the past because there wasn't a significant need for it, but now as they're moving forward, they want to go ahead and adopt some of the best practices and controls and make their controls automated, for example, from being manual. So access controls, GRC access controls is the module that enables you to do that. That's probably the most popular module among the three GRC modules that I'll talk about. So access risk analysis is the number one, ARA, for example, the number one demand from our customers. And what that does is this capability enables you to find violations of your segregation of duty policies or restricted access policies, and document any mitigating controls or remediation work that is required to close out those risks or mitigate those risks. So that's number one. The second item here on the bottom left text is access request management. And what that enables you to do is automate the provisioning process itself. So once you have remediated the risk, next thing you want to do is actually mitigate and prevent that risk from happening in the future. So the workflow capability will enable you to identify the risks as their request is processed. So for example, if you have access to general ledger already and you're requesting access to payables, and the payable access will enable you to create a liability which you can reverse through the general ledger, we can prevent that from happening. Okay. On the top right of this chart, you'll see emergency access management. So we recognize that customers often need access for IT users and others to go in with and perform critical actions, such as adjusting some entry before the month end or period end can be processed. So those users generally don't need access all the time, but if it's granted access, you want to be able to make sure that it's an automated workflow for access request and logging of that review. And so that's where emergency access manager comes in. And then finally, business roles management is where you can control the role maintenance, management of roles, enable workflow, so there's change tracking on role changes, analysis of the roles, and approval of roles before they are granted. So a combination of these four components is what makes access controls powerful, automated internal controls application to take away the burden of you managing these types of critical risks. That is also required by regulatory bodies like the Sarbanes-Oxley Act in the US and GDPR in Europe. So now let's take a look at what are some of the functionality in each of these modules. So you'll see on the left, we'd basically provide you some examples of what is access risk analysis, right? So the first step is about identifying and mitigating and remediating that risk. So what access risk analysis enables you to do is run certain reports, run dashboards, drill down onto reports, identify the risks, and then identify mitigating controls. What do I mean by that? So let's say you identify that there's someone that can create a journal entry and approve that journal entry and post it, right? So this creates a risk because I could possibly create a incorrect entry and and hide a liability or overstate an asset, etc. So if you identify those two competing access levels within the same user and their role, and that's required because that person is in a small business unit and you cannot hire a second person to do that job in that business unit, you can put a mitigating control like general ledger reconciliation. And that reconciliation will identify if any of the entries are outside the threshold level, outside your tolerance level of risk. And so that's an example of mitigating control. You can put that mitigating control to reduce the risk level to an acceptable level. You can also remediate, in other words, take away the access of that user from approving their own journal entries, right? So that would be a remediation task. And then for ongoing monitoring, once you have got the clean system, you want to run that on a periodic basis so that based on those T codes and the authorization object levels, including the activities and the company codes, you can go in and identify if there's any new risk that has emerged since your last analysis. So most of our clients will run that on a periodic basis. Some will do it daily, monthly, weekly, and that's easy to set up in any system. And then finally is the preventive piece. So how do you prevent that? And the way we do that is through SOD simulation of any changes that are made to the roles. So if you create a general ledger role that suddenly have access to put a liability or approve a liability that was not in the previous role, the system will identify that risk and help you mitigate that. So that's essentially access risk analysis. The next part that I wanted to touch on is the heart of the application, which is the GRC rule set. So the GRC rule set enables you to basically take your general policies in the business and apply them to an SAP security model. And so the rule sets typically consist of a segregation of duty as well as sensitive access rules. You can also include other rules in there, for example, mitigating controls themselves that you have already in your risk control matrix, right? So the rule set's really the heart of the application. It works for all the GRC modules, and it enables you to provide the accurate and timely results, which is where you reduce your compliance cost by reducing your audit time and remediation time, and therefore lowering the SLAs on access request focused on the right risk, right? So you want to grant access, but you also want to grant access to people that comply with your policies. Elimination of audit surprises via proper use of mitigating controls. That's another key bullet point because that enables you to make sure that, if there are any surprise, you want to avoid surprises. If there's any risk, you want to get it reduced before the auditors and management gets in there and realizes that risk. Finally, one of the important parts of any compliance project is to manage control cost. And so you can do more with less by automating these controls. These are just a quick overview on how GRC rule set enables you to streamline the application. A list of definitions I've included in here for those of you that would like to dig a little deeper into it. I won't have time to get into all of these right now, but as you can see that we support all of these capabilities. A rule structure is based on those rule definitions. So SOD between accounts, payables and payments, and vendor master and maintenance. Let's say that's an example of an SOD rule. Accounts, payables, payments may have these functions or transaction codes, and then vendor master and maintenance may have these transactions. The combination of the two is what produces the result set. In this example, you can see that this user has a combination of the two, and this is where the risk is in the rule. So it filters out the risk based on the definition of a rule. So that's an example of what a rule looks like. Basically, it's the container of risk. And risk is typically made up of one-to-many functions, so that if I say vendor master maintenance, it's all of those functions like creating and changing and so forth. So it's a combination. Okay, that's an important concept for those of you that are planning to implement GRC access controls for the first time. Evaluation of logic is inherent to the GRC at all the levels, but individual field values. So it evaluates based on individual field levels, but it applies to at all levels. And that's a concept that is really important to auditors to ensure that there's completeness on your result set. So what it looks like in GRC, latest version of GRC, is that you have an access risk ID. You define what type of risk it is, tied to a business process, description of the risk, level of the risk, as well as the function IDs that make up that. So these are transaction codes, right? And you can put in description and control objectives to tie back to your overall risk control matrix. The functions are the foundation of your rule set. So functions are made up of typically actions, which are your T codes, permissions, which are authorizations, objects, fields, and values, business processes. And you can do it in a single system, or you can go across systems. So this enables you to create the key functions, like in this example, we're showing function ID that is tied to these are different activities that enable you to perform that function. And then the risk types within segregation of duties is one. You also have critical access, which is function risk containing more than sensitive areas of access, and then permissions, risk containing authorization. For example, do the report critical permissions and so forth. So these are different types of functions within segregation of risk that you can identify. You can see that you can also identify risk types in terms of critical actions and permissions, as we have talked about here. So the way SOD analysis works is that from a process standpoint, internal request over, for example, internal audit, somebody in finance will request evaluation of a risk, in terms of process proper access. So if the risk is granted proper access, in other words, it doesn't violate any SOD policies or sensitive access policies, we call that as a success. So there's no risk, so we're all good. But if it fails that test, then the risk owner or business process lead will typically get involved and confirm the exceptions and document the action required. So they may say, well, this is an IT user, we're giving them an exception, whitelisting them or whatever. Or if they're if it requires us to remove that user's access, that's called remediation as well. And so that remediation plan would be documented. Remediation 3A, step 3A here shows you that is remediation applicable. If it is, then you'll send a request for remediation. If remediation is not required, then you must mitigate that risk, and that's the best practices. In other words, the example I used before was reconciliation, manual reconciliation, where you couldn't take away the access to approve journal entries, right? And so assign to a mitigating control, which could be that reconciliation control, as I mentioned in the previous example. And then from there, request is created and processed for mitigating control. So this is a nice workflow I thought I should include, just to give you an idea. If you're moving to HANA 4 and you're looking to adopt the GRC access controls platform, that this would be a good way to think about who to involve in the project and the implementation of your in education and training and so forth. Basically build a RACI matrix that we typically build for these types of plans. There are some leading practices from SAP that we have included here as well. So frequency is usually aligned, but not limited to the control frequency of user recertification audit plans. Process should be defined for reviewing and resolving issues and accepting. So this is good to define that up front. Like I said, we typically would do a RACI matrix on that, and then discuss process flows to analyze, compare segregation of duties. So being able to define what's the frequency of the analysis and so forth, and who's doing it. These are all operational highlights that we would like to offer further advice if you're interested, and best practices. Okay, automating access provisioning through GRC access controls. So this is an example where we have 3 levels of approvers. So once you've cleaned in the previous step, you've done the analysis, mitigated and remediated the risk. This is an example of keeping it clean through prevention. So this example shows you that there's a requester that comes in, requests access. They go through a review process. and then they have multiple level of reviewers. You may have a users manager, a role owner, and somebody that's at the higher level, like a mitigating approver. And so based on the SOD risks, you go ahead and auto provision to SAP or notify the user if it's rejected or granted access. You can notify the user. In terms of leading practices related to access controls for user provisioning, simulation configuring simulation correctly is very important so that you can analyze for SOD risks before the user is granted any access. Access requests enabled for single business role, being able to do it for one or more roles, and then objective being discuss workflow for users creation, right? What's the best way to implement this workflow in your organization? Those are some examples of leading practices that we discuss with our clients before considering the implementation of this workflow so that it fits nicely into your structure. And then for the EAM functionality overview, we have emergency access management. And so this allows you to take responsibility for those users that need temporary access to be able to process the information or go make an adjustment inside the system. So basically, the key highlights or takeaways from this piece are transaction activity data values changes that are made by them, by those emergency access users, firefighters, I call them firefighter users. Is it correct? Is it the changes made are what was authorized, let's say in a ticketing system or other method that you use. Various reports and graphs to monitor what was changed, how you monitored it. Workflow can be configured to automatically send EAM logs to appropriate approvers. So these can go out automatically. And it can be configured based on roles or based on user IDs. Okay. So this is a key component for those support staff that needs emergency access during production system disruptions caused by data, programs, etc. And the different ways of setting up the firefighter, centralized, decentralized, or role-based. If you have further interest in that, please reach out to us and we'll provide further details, but in interest of time, I'll keep moving. So again, the concepts are here as well. What is a firefighter? What's the ID, et cetera, et cetera. And then emergency access requester is the workflow, just like I showed you the previous workflows. So we can process that information for emergency access the same way, and you can see there's logs. And this is the review log. So once the workflow is completed, the work is completed rather by the firefighter, the logs are available for the firefighter controller, and the escalation is available if required. Okay, so in the limited few minutes we have, I'll just give you very briefly the upgrade checklist. So this is the new Access Controls 12.0 architecture. Again, it's fairly detailed. If you need to reach this presentation will be made available online on our website, so you can review it there. But it's also available obviously through SAP. That's the source of the document. And these are some of the things I wanted to include from the SAP upgrade checklist for those of you planning to upgrade. So you can see there's a number of upgrades required on the technical components like NetWeaver, UI, etc. And there are minimum requirements on what level you need to be to get to the 12. And so that's one approach you can take. Also, there's in the sheet I've included of what are required and optional steps. for each of them. So to close the meeting out, I wanted to just talk about an alternative option that SafePaaS offers as well. So let's say that the cost and effort required to move from your current GRC, or if you're considering to implement GRC for the first time, is cost and the effort required doing it all on site. It has an impact on your HANA project because of lack of resources, internal budgets, etc. So we offer an alternative to that, which is basically SafePaaS. And so what SafePaaS has is the same type of risk mitigation within a cloud platform. So it doesn't require any hardware. You can be up and running within a couple of weeks. So it's a lot shorter to get things done here. And so these are examples of that content or rule set that I talked about in SafePaaS, which is included in our content controls catalog. So it's a list of all those activities based on the transaction codes and objects and authorizations that will enable you to build your rules, and we provide a set of rules as well. And you'll be able to then import, if you currently have SAP GRC, you'll be able to import those rules directly into SafePaaS. If you don't have those rules, then you can build them yourself here, or we provide a catalog like I showed you earlier, where you can pull in the rule set. So that's the heart of the access controls application, and so that's one possibility. You can also mark your false positives. You can see there's an import and export capabilities, and you can add your rules. So that's how the rules management works here in SafePaaS. What you get is the very useful dashboards right away once you run the analysis, and you have drill down capabilities, so you can see which users have the highest risks, where are those risks, and so forth. And then all the violations reported by the user in the role level are captured, provide you more advanced reporting, slice and dice the data. And again, this support you can get within a couple of weeks because of the integration capabilities of HANA, as well as our ability to import the rules or use our content and then analyze that against your data without impacting your HANA project or resources internally. So all the entry points around SAP are defined here. We call them entry points. User conflicts are defined, and violation status is defined. So this enables you to get a comprehensive report. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the session, all the major audit firms, we work with all the major audit firms. So, they have leveraged the same application for their clients. So the full path is available to you here. You can also get the security configuration report. So being able to drill into a specific type of a security model. And this is all, by the way, enabled through that API or the services, integration services that are available to us through this process. So you can see all the completeness. For the completeness sake, we are both bringing in the data either through ABAP, or like this shows, or through SQL or other methods that are available and exposed to us through those integration services. And finally, you can mark false positives at any level. So authorization, object authorization level, transaction level, activity or menu level. So that makes it easier for us to process and remediate. In addition to that, we have I'll just close the session by telling you some more best practices around the actual monitoring of changes. So as you're going through this upgrade of HANA 4, and you're not going to just have the access configurations change, security change, but also system configuration. So we have the ability to compare and verify that your system configuration in SAP are accurate. And this is all done in a offline through a snapshot process. As you can see on the top of the screen, it says snapshot. So it doesn't impact your project and also maintains independence, right? So whereas if the GRC is installed inside your SAP environment, your concern is, whether the data that you're reviewing is accurate and independent. So by having it in its own data hub away from the ERP target, it makes it possible for the auditors to rely on this more completely and timely and so forth. So this is an example where the journal required journalist approval is turned off. It also tracks all changes. So if something's turned off and turned it back on, let's say you've recently gone live with HANA 4 and somebody's made a change to journal sources to approve or reject a journal, you can see that. You can also track all changes to master data across multiple objects like supplier changes and so forth. So this is additional benefit on top of what you would get with access controls. And that's really useful. We talked a lot about remediation and mitigating controls. So this capability in MonitorPaaS becomes your automated mitigating control, which enables you to reduce the burden on audit and control owners to be able to do all this work manually month after month through traditional reporting. So this advanced reporting capability enables you to build on top of your access controls. We support many non-SAP environments too. So in the beginning of the session, I mentioned SAP, and in addition to SAP, other sessions. So those are all supported. So if you're using Siebel for some areas like our SAP customers do for customer service, or Microsoft or NetSuite, or JD Edwards, whatever you're using, eBusiness Suite for business units that are not on SAP, you could certainly leverage that and see cross-platform as well as multi-platform solutions. One thing I'll leave you with, I mentioned process control. We won't have time to get into today, but if you are considering process control, if you use process controls, ProcessPaaS workflows enable you to automate any process. This is an example of a financial close process, which tends to be one of the highest risk areas for our SAP customers. So you can do, for example, your financial statement close using this close process, and that enables you to make sure that all those subtasks that are required to close your financial results, even with the right level of access, are performed accurately, timely, and completely, right? So that you can make those financial statement assertions to complete the process. In addition, you can do analysis based on heuristics, for example, similar invoices, duplicate invoices, and so forth. So you can really make your process control more automated and embedded, which reduces your overall cost of ownership and improves your ability to generate profits. We do have a number of experts in HANA 4 available to help you guide through this process and journey that are certified by SAP. So please reach out to us and we will put you in touch with our experts that can help you make this journey easier and productive. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Emma to close out the session. Emma, go ahead.
Thanks, Adil.
Are there any questions? I know we're over time, but maybe we can take one question if you have time.
Yes, yes, thanks, Adil, and thanks for all your questions. I have chosen just a couple. The first one being, how long does it take to implement SafePaaS GRC on SAP HANA S4?
Yeah, so typically, if you're implementing SafePaaS, as I said, it sits in the cloud, so it's an easier solution to implement than an on-premise solution. So, like I said, we can get results in a couple of weeks, but the full implementation for our typical customers, 12 to 16 weeks. That includes basically the analysis of, SOD policies or access policies, as well as providing high-level remediation planning, making sure the controls are producing the right results. In other words, false positives are mitigated, and then finally, providing the training and acceptance testing from the users community before deployment, and good knowledge transfer throughout this process. So yeah, I would say about, you should put in a couple of weeks to get the results, but then to just get the whole thing from an SDLC perspective, and I would give it somewhere between 12 to 16 weeks.
Thank you. And the second question, how did the reports from SafePaaS SOD analysis compare to SAP GRC?
Oh, great question. So as I mentioned, a number of the audit firms use our systems to certify their audits for clients. So the information that I've shared in this presentation will answer that question in more detail. We'll put this presentation online. Like I said, take a look at those reports. They provide you the complete path to the risk. And so in that regard, they're similar to the SAP. Of course, we use our own reporting tool. So the formats are clearly, in our mind, it's more clearer. Some of the SAP GRC reports were built many, many years ago that I've been in this market for 15 plus years, and they haven't changed much. So just provides you a little better ad hoc reporting capability to take advantage of all the technology that HANA 4 offers in this world. So thank you again for everyone. We're going to close out this presentation, and Emma, I'll turn it back to you to close out.
Yes, thank you everyone for joining us today. Don't hesitate to reach out to me, Emma here at SafePaaS for a further discussion and to learn more about the SafePaaS platform. So thank you and have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.